crack of time that I have to clean my glasses. Okay. Today I figured I would just do some face loops, some continuous line drawings that I've done in the past, but realized that I've been experimenting more and wanted to have a few options in my shop. Shirts you can buy, but I'd sort of continue part of the theme of what I've been working on the past day or so, which is seeing how stuff scales. And in this instance, it'll be the idea of just drawing. It won't be the exact same, but you'll see a little bit of the variation when you start with a larger thing and drawing on that space, and then one that's the same aspect ratio but a bit smaller, a bit smaller, a bit smaller. I don't know how well that reads on camera, but these are all the same aspect ratio of 3x4. So the smallest one's the most obvious one. That's just 3 inches by 4 inches, and this is 6 by 4.5 because I cut a piece of paper down to about that size. This is 8 by 6, and this is the largest that will fit on my scanner bed, which is 8 1/4 by 11. So today's a little bit more straightforward, so to speak, at least for me. I'm just going to be working on drawing some face loops things for better contrast. I'm going to throw a blank piece of white paper. I'll grab a couple. It'll help underneath here, because there's some odds and ends of things there. Slightly more intimate with it, and a little bit more on, so you can see it a little bit more clearly. You should have enough contrast to see what's happening. Come on, pen. Let me grab a paper towel. I got these for this reason. Really like the sound of paper towels being pulled apart. Okay. Now let's go. Should be writing okay, yep. One second. There's some people working outside the house, and the doorbell just rang. Let me throw the thing down. Apologies. Great way to start. Okay. There's some people who have been working on the roof. And there are no outlets outside of this house. So they had an extension cord going inside. And they were being courteous and professional by asking to come inside to unplug the extension cord. A few weeks ago, or was it like a month ago, that remnants of, I forget if it was labeled a hurricane or not, made its way through the United States and came up to the northeast. But a lot of winds happened, and in that the roof here lost some shingles. It's been in need of repair for a bit. And they were gonna come earlier, but there's been some rain happening. And so we've been working today. Hello, Felix. Hello. Is it Victor? Vidcor? Not sure. This makes a bit of a scraping noise. If the mic was picking up everything. You'd be able to hear my computer fan is running because I left a few programs open. A little bit out of it today. Yeah, there's some background noise. I'm not 100% sure what all is left in the roof repair process. But I got woken up by people working on the roof. And I was sleepy. And in my mind, I was still in a bit of a dream state. And in my mind, I thought that someone was trying to falsify a recreation of the. I'm not sure when it came out. I feel like it was 98 or sometime late 90s, early 2000s. The Wild Wild West movie with. I do not remember that actor, but I do remember it had Will Smith. And it ends with the primary antagonist creating a giant, or implementing, he had already created it, a giant metal robot spider. And so, in my not quite awake stupor, hearing the mechanics of people removing and building and constructing the elements of new roof stuff, I thought, man, someone's up on the roof and they're trying to convince me that this is the climactic scene from Wild Wild West, starring Salma Hayek, Will Smith, and I forget the other dude. And then I remembered that roofers were supposed to come today, but you don't think in those terms when you're sleepy. You think I think it's like more ridiculous to think that someone would be trying to recreate that movie scene and like convince me of it. Not the idea that someone would try to recreate that movie scene, but the idea that someone would try to fake it and they like knew, oh, I can't do this, so I'm gonna wake Matthias up by just annoying him with me doing the Foley from this memorable, not at all. It's a weird scene. Oh, hello, Ian. So this is the one that takes the most amount of time. It's the largest one. These faces come out of working with wire, line contour drawings, light painting. This is a, I guess it doesn't have it clearly written on it, but it's a Koh-i-Noor repeatograph. I'll just write that down. That's Koh-i-Noor repeatograph. You can buy different brands of repeatograph pens, and this is a 0.35 nib. These pens cost between like $20 to $50 depending where you're getting them and what size nib they have. The smaller or larger ones I think tend to be, like if it's super fine or super wide, they tend to be a little bit more expensive. You can buy them in sets that range from like $100 to $200 and you get like 4 to 5 of them. They last a very long time if you maintain them. It's pretty easy to let the ink dry, and then you can do your best to clean out all the pieces of them, but the ink can dry in there pretty easily. And if you have the smaller nibs, then ink can dry in there a lot faster. But you can refill them however many times you need to, and they can last. I've had some where I keep up with them for several years. It all sort of comes down to how you treat them, and that's pretty much all. How you treat them and how you maintain them. They can last you however long as you use them. Most of the ones that I've had that sort of go bad tend to be when I fill up a pen and then forget that there's ink in there, and then I don't have I don't clean them in time and the ink dries in there, or I don't use them. Hello, Marine. You have to get used to writing with these pens, and it changes a bit depending on the paper and the nib, but they will write like on plastic and stuff too. You don't need as much of something pulling the ink out, like a marker sort of has to have it pulled out a bit. They don't do well with paper that has a lot of tooth, because the nib, the tip of the pen, is metal, and so it sort of drags along heavier tooth paper, and because doesn't require as much to draw out the ink, you can, if you have a heavy tooth paper, it'll sort of settle. You just have to try and see what it works like for you. You sort of get used to how you can make the pen pull ink again. There's also a thank you, Mirage, or Raj, I'm not sure what your name is. Appreciate it. And if I say your name incorrectly, feel free to try and spell it out for me. I'm used to people saying my name every different way. And so I am not at all bothered by trying to correctly say your name. And if you'd rather not clarify at all, that's totally cool too. You don't owe me anything. What I might end up doing is treating the smaller aspect ratio. Thanks, Jagmohan. I'm not sure if that. Sorry, I was laughing at how I was going to try and pronounce it, and that I was struggling. Not your name, if your name is anything close to that. Laughing at my inability. This pen also doesn't do as well with sort of angling forward. It pulls very nicely, but it does not push smoothly at all. Because the nib, the tip of the pen, the pin mechanism sort of has, here, pull it out for a second. It has the ink well back in here, and that's where you can refill it. I don't want to separate it because I'll inevitably drip ink in places. And then there's this plastic housing here that it just is held on through friction. And there's a small well down in here. And then this nib, this section you can twist off and it'll separate. But the actual mechanism that is inside the pen is you have the well down here, and then there's a section that intersects it that has an opening, and then there's a sort of metal piston of sorts here that has a long thin piece of metal that goes up, and then the top of the pen is here, and it inserts into a tube, and you can see this long thin piece of wire point out. And so because it's a metal tube that has a piece of wire sticking out of it, it'll pull fine, but if you try to push, it doesn't do as well. Let's keep going. I might start messing with drawing some that are larger. To fill out the space better. A little all over. Where? Okay. I lose track of where I'm at sometimes. I've done these on slightly larger scales, and for those, sometimes I tape down or like physically leave my pen pointing at where things are because it is confusing to come back to after time has passed. Super wide, tiny lips. And we're done with this guy. Put a little date over here. Today is the 5th. It's only fitting that I kind of mess up when I'm writing the date. Okay, so now let's might try sketching on a smaller scale. I think I'm going to just try sketching on a smaller scale and then blowing it up pretty big. So let's just go for it. Yeah. It's not going great. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do one step up. Do it with brush so that it has a different characteristic to it and I can blow it up to a larger size. Hello, Nintendo. Hello, Shula. I have every direction. That way, that way, that way, this way. Yep, okay. Okay, let me do this. So now let's scan. Show you the two drones I did. And then get stuff prepped. This is a shorter stream today because that's where I'm at with it. Decided just to. This one took longer than I anticipated. Image capture. Shotgun. And then I'll have to thank you, Gerard or Owen or Gerard Owen. Full deal For the sake of myself, I'm gonna do it at 1200, and these are going into a different folder. 5 designs, 1005, choose that. 1005-2020. This is Faceloops pen. Now give that a second because it's scanning a large area. Any questions? How stuff's going? How are you guys? Just waiting on this thing. Take a minute or two to scan. Don't want to touch the scanner. I was going to sit down my computer and get some Cheez-Its. It also wouldn't help with this paper that I have. Any oil on my fingers sort of like it holds on to it. Okay, so let's add an image. Just hit OK. Hit OK. Make that transparent for the moment. Grab this big old dude because this is scanned, added. Hang it, I scanned it to the wrong. I think I scanned it to the wrong place. Did I? Nope. Okay. Let's go in. 5 designs. 5. JPEG, and now we get to scale this down so that it's not covering the entirety of my stream area. This is bigger than I realized. It's invisible for the moment. But almost there. And boom. Okay, now let's scan this other one. This will also be at 1200 DPI, but smaller. So less happening with that. What you're looking at is a scan of this guy. Overview scan. Get this a bit smaller. And this is Faceloops brush. Scan that bad boy. Thank you, Reno. I don't know. Oh, what I was saying before, the oil from my fingers transfers to this sort of paper and holds on to it pretty well. So if I eat Cheez-Its, my hands can get oily pretty easy. New and main, same deal. And for the moment, open up the brush dude. This one shouldn't be quite as big. Because it's like a quarter, if not smaller, physically. And well, bam. Let's get these both a little smaller. This one doesn't really scale down so well. But these are just basic face loops. That's what I call them. And They are explorations and simplifying faces. And what you can and can't. Thank you, Demi. I'm not sure how to say your name. Did see that you I think you're the one who commented on a post of mine earlier and put cherries. Yeah, so that's what those are. One is using brush, so the lines are a little bit smoother, vary in thickness more so. Also, here's something interesting. You ever play with those or have those like fortune-telling fish that are pieces of plastic that curl and it's supposed to be like you're in love or something like that? That has to do with the same sort of thing happening. Your body heat will cause it to expand on one side just a little bit, enough to distort it. So if you flip it to the other side, it'll reverse. In the past, when I have stuff that's like particularly curled like this, when I need to scan it, I'll go breathe on it. I've painted them decent size. The largest one I have in close proximity is this guy. This is like 36 by something. And then the blockhead guys, I painted them larger than this because they scale up a bit better. But these are a little bit easier to scale up because they're geometric, where when it comes to the looping faces that have lines, it's hard to keep the sort of characterization, to keep the hand drawn, the loose edges and such. You end up, or I end up, with a lot more geometric shapes to them, and I like to have a mix. And so oftentimes what I'll do is sketch it either in pencil so that it has a looser feel to it, because if you work just with brush, or when I work with brush, the canvas, it's harder to get a solid line consistently. I just want to put these back up before I forget. Canvas will pull a lot more of the moisture out, even if it's gessoed. And so you have to work in short little spurts. Hello, Lenore. And in working in those short little spurts, those little pulling things, you don't have as much a natural sort of shape or drawing to it. So I tend to either sketch out, or sometimes what I'll do is I'll even make it small scale and project it large and then go and translate it to the larger format, just because it tends to look better to me. These things that are sort of loose, it's hard to draw large scale and have the same little changes and stuff. It's weird getting up, standing up, talking at the same time. But also it probably has something to do with the fact that when you're working larger, you're using more of your arm. I imagine that has something to do with it. My hand's a little bit dry. I washed it several times because earlier today I went by the grocery store, because Mondays are my grocery store day now. I'm still keeping it to trying to be like out and about once a week, maybe. At least in a confined space with strangers. But I washed my hands several times after getting back because I have some degree of paranoia about getting sick and getting other folks sick and the guilt that I'd have if I were to get someone else sick. Because I might not know. But anyway, so I wash my hands a lot. My hands are dry. And touching on them made me aware of that. So yeah, sometimes I'll work small, project it, and then paint it larger, because the things that look okay at this scale are the texture of all the elements and such. When you blow it up, the edges start to look worse, but the general shapes still look good. I like to do it, project it, and then that makes it so I can clean up the edges, because people will to get decent line variation. I mostly like brushes. I've had some brush pens in the past that I liked, but I did not keep up with them, and I couldn't use the ink that I wanted to, because they came with, the ones that I found came with little refillable cartridges, and I didn't want to chance it because there's less information available for using inks with brush pens. You can also try, if you do get a fountain pen, those have a little bit more variation. If you're looking for a ballpoint pen, this one I liked a lot. I gotta be mildly careful because now my fingers have a decent amount of oil, or not oil, stuff on them. You can get roller ball pins. This one, you can get some variation in the line weight pretty easily. It's not good for writing. This one I also have had for a bit. But I think Ohto, O-H-T-O, I forget what brand this is. Let me turn these off. Lose track of time. This one you can get decent variation in pretty heavy lines if you look for rollerball pins, rollerball nibs. I can't remember what brand this is. Or maybe it is Ohto, and maybe that's the brand of the pen. I've messed around with buying different ballpoint pens and small fountain pens and stuff like that. If you're looking for a smooth one where you can get a little bit of variation to it by pressure, it doesn't change as much based on position. It's more how you're pushing down. Look for roller ball pins. Roller ball. Also, if you get a fountain pen that has a split nib towards the tip, which can either be a dipping fountain pen, or I guess that's not considered a fountain pen. Maybe it is, but fountain pens that have a split down the middle, like a physical split, and usually there's a sort of ball at the end. This one is moderately priced. The brush pen that I got that I liked more was like $20 or more, I forget. It was very nice, and it kept a very thin, precise edge because it was some like mink hair or something, or I don't know. But because I like a little bit more control and the possibility to switch out inks easily, and use Sumi ink, which gets a nice solid black. I like using just cheap brushes that I get. And you can get a lot more. You can get very expensive brushes, but it's hard to get a non-brush pen, or not use a brush, and have the ability to curve and get like that thick of a line. And that thin. And then you can also mess with like doing dry brush where it's messier, drier, and sort of skips around. This one is in bad shape, this pen, or this brush. You can get a nibbed marker, or a chisel marker, and that'll let you have a bit of variation. This is pretty dry, but just like a chisel Sharpie. I don't know what else I have here. You can also mess with something that might have a bit of a curved felt tip. And mess with the pressures of that. I really like brushes get them something that you can't translate as well to digital space. A quality that like you can sort of see that it looks like it, but it doesn't quite. I don't have any. I've got like some microns, but you've probably tried those out before, and these are kind of dried out because I don't use them so often. Brush is my favorite. Rollerball pin might give you a bit of variation. Brush fountain pen, or a fountain pen that has a nib like that. If you get a dip fountain pen as opposed to pocket fountain pen, like a dipping pen, then you can try different nibs much more easily than switching out nibs in a different sort of pen, like this guy. Like switching out the nibs on this, you have to like clean them out and flush them, which you should with these guys as well, but there's less mechanics to it, so there's less to clean out and switch out. Any other questions? Yeah, and you can buy cheap brushes. I got a bunch of these from Amazon for like $10 or something, and they're a bit inconsistent with the quality or like the behavior of the brush tip, but these were like all of these were less than $20, where if you get a pen from an art store or a pencil, a brush from an art store that's of a similar size and shape, it'll be like $7 plus, depending on what brand and material it is. I haven't spent a lot of time exploring brushes. I just found that I like small round brushes. I tried this guy out at some point and it's too broad. I haven't figured out how to use it. It's one that's meant for like Chinese calligraphy. This is a Repeatograph Kohinoor sketch pen. Okay, if no one has questions or thoughts or concerns, I'll get to having these two designs up and available as shirts in the next hour or so. Post about it and try to be back tomorrow. That's the plan. Tomorrow at 3. I was a little late today because I was cutting some stuff and got distracted. So thanks for watching. I'll give you guys like 30 seconds if there's any last minute things. Otherwise, I'm going to head out. And I'm going to have some Cheez-Its. Thank you. Okay. Goodbye.